Greetings. I'm sitting in a railway station at the moment, one of those transient places in the world where we don't go to, we go between places through them. And I think that's probably a good place to make this video. Because if you're going onto my channel, and certainly, if you don't know me or it's your first time on, you're like, well, okay, he's doing a Camino video. Why is he starting at part 2? Like, where's part 1? And that's what this video is going to be explaining, where part 1 is. So, and Camino, what is it? Camino is a pilgrimage. It's about 500 miles, about 800 kilometers across the north of Spain. It's a millennium old pilgrimage, and basically it goes to what is reputed to be the tomb of St. James the Apostle. And it became very popular in the Middle Ages when it became hard to go to the Holy Land on pilgrimage, and for Christians, for Catholics, but also as a symbol of the fact that Spain had been reconquered from the Moors, from the Muslims. So it was like this, Spain is open for Christianity again, kind of thing. So that's its history, that and it continued for, they say it has continued non-stop for a millennium. Like, it probably has, but not really, because in the last 100 to 50 years it virtually died out. I mean, there was like maybe 20 people a year doing it at one point, but it started to be reborn in the 80s. I think, ironically, I think Franco tried to promote it, which, considering the kind of people you find on it these days, is really funny, because they are not the kind of people that would vote for Franco. And I actually think the kind of spirituality that you find on the Camino, I don't think Franco would approve, if we're perfectly honest, because it's all a bit counterculture. But yeah, he started it, I have been told, and it's continued, and it grows and grows. And I don't know the latest figures, but I think there are about 300,000 people a year doing Camino at the moment. Camino is not a single route. There are multiple routes. There's a Portuguese one that goes through Portugal up to Santiago. There's one that goes from Madrid, and there's one that goes from Rome, Barcelona, and so on. There are several, but this one, which is the Camino Frances, which means the French Camino, and it's the route that French pilgrims traditionally took, is like by far and away the most popular. And when people say Camino, they usually mean that one. Camino, the word itself, just means way, the way, and it starts traditionally at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in France, just on the French side of the Pyrenees, and then continues over the Pyrenees into Spain, and then across northern Spain. Now, actually, the Camino didn't start there at all, but because people walked from their homes in the Middle Ages. So people would walk from Germany, people would walk from all parts of France, from Switzerland, from Italy, but that's where the routes met, and that was the kind of place where they went over the Pyrenees. So that's why today Saint-Jean is seen as the place where the Camino starts. I first heard of the Camino in, oh my God, it must have been about 2002-3 time. Basically, I'd been on the train from from China to Kazakhstan. I met an Irish guy there called Brian Conlon, who's still a friend of mine, and he had recommended that I read Paulo Coelho's books. I'd never heard of Paulo Coelho before, and the most famous one being The Alchemist, where the main character is called Santiago after the guy, St. James. That's the Spanish rendering of St. James, the guy who the pilgrimage is all about. Paulo Coelho is very, very, very interested in Camino and has done it. I believe he lives on the route somewhere. And but he did one called, in English, The Manual of the Warrior of Light, where I think, or is it called, it might even be called The Road to Santiago, where he basically goes on the Camino with his spiritual teacher, and he learns certain spiritual exercises. It's a bit weird, if I'm honest, but I enjoyed the book, and I thought, yeah, it's kind of vaguely interesting, wouldn't mind trying that one day. Then, many years later, a friend of mine, Paul Daly, did a week or so of it with his father, and raved about it. Really, really enjoyed it. And then I thought, yes, I have to go. And then I saw the film The Way with Martin Sheen, and I'm like, dude, I have to do that. Now, I'd always intended to do it in about 5 or 6 years' time, because what happened, my life plan, and I appreciate that life rarely goes to plan, but my life plan is that when my son is old enough to leave home and doesn't need his dad to look after him anymore, then I would go and work abroad again. But in between life in Britain and life abroad, I would take a couple of months out and do Camino. And that was the plan, and that kind of makes sense. But then back in 2015, I went to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or better known as North Korea, and I injured my knee. This one here, there. I injured it rather stupidly wrestling with the locals, and I couldn't walk properly for 2 months. And then it got better slowly, and then I did exactly the same injury again. It was knocked out for 2 months again, and my knee was just weak, and my body, I mean, I wasn't in the greatest shape anyway, but I just thought, do you know what? Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do Camino. And actually, the day it happened, when I was in North Korea and this injury took place, my thought was, oh God, I can't do Camino. That was what I actually thought as I injured it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do Camino. And so I was like, right, okay, I'm going to have to think about this, because maybe my body actually cannot do this. And so what I thought I'd do is try a week to see if I can cope with it. And I did that last year, 2018, August 2018. I flew out to Biarritz, and I was, for like a couple of nights before, I was having real nightmares that I would basically never get over the Pyrenees, that I would fail, and that I would never do Camino, and that I physically could not do Camino. And I never had that feeling before, because even when I do stuff which most people would say is quite scary, like go to North Korea or go to Eritrea or Israel, or places that a lot of people would be a bit wary about, like that never phases me, nor does any academic endeavours. And I think, although I'm always challenging myself, on ground that is kind of safe for me, because I know I'm academic. I know I can travel, and I'm not scared of that kind of stuff. But this was a physical challenge, as well as a spiritual and a mental challenge. It was a physical challenge. And I was petrified. And I went out there, and I intended to do videos, and I actually did do a video talking about my fears the first night in Biarritz before I went on it. And I did a video on the first day. So on the first day, it took me ages to get up to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, but then got on the way about 3:30 in the afternoon. And so I only did about 5 kilometers just up the foothills of the Pyrenees, because I wouldn't have time to cross over it, and there's a huge gap between places to stay. And so I went to a place called Junto, and I mean, there was an horrific climb to get to the guest house, but I got there in the end, and I was knackered, but I'd done it, and I did my videos, and I was going to make this great series of videos. And then life got in the way. And what do I mean by that? So the next morning, I had slept well in the albergue. Albergue is like the place where you stay. And I set off, and I thought, right, I've got all day. I've knocked off 5 kilometers, so it's about 20 kilometers to do. Like, I'm gonna, I've got all day to do this. I'm gonna do it, And within a kilometer, I was just ready to give up, because it was so steep, and I was literally walking 10 meters, like, and stopping and pretending to look at the scenery while everybody steamed past me. And I was just, Mate, you're not going to be able to do this. And I'm just like, come on, see if you can get to Horizon, which is the final kind of albergue that's up there. I thought, well, maybe stay the night at Horizon and either make your way down or give it another lash tomorrow. And I was doing that, and I was basically in my own pit of misery, almost in tears, because I thought, I'm going to have to give up this dream that I'd longed to do, and how pathetic on the first day, essentially. And then this lady stopped, and she said, you know it helps if you talk. And I'm like, I can't talk, I can't breathe. And then she's like, well, I'll talk and you listen. And she walked with me. And from that second, it became easier. It wasn't easy, but I became much easier. And it was a miracle. It really was. She was like my Camino angel. Her name is Jackie. She was Australian. We walked together for 3 or 4 days and got on really, really well. Really nice person. Still in touch. Still friends. And we made it over the Pyrenees. And I have never ever felt exhaustion. And it wasn't just the climb up, but the going down. Because of my dodgy knee, like my knee would start shaking, and I couldn't actually go down hills very well. But we made it up and down, and the exhaustion that I felt going into Roncesvalles, which is the big monastery on the Spanish side, I've never felt anything like that. But also the sense of achievement, and it was something you can't buy, you can't imagine, you just have to do it. It was unbelievable. And what made it for me, and I mean, the next day was virtually almost as hard, and it carried on, but what Camino was for me was the people you met. Like, the scenery was great, but I've seen scenery before, yeah. The food's amazing. I've had nice food before, too much of it. And the religious purpose is good, but it was the people. And I'd gone there expecting to spend a lot of time in prayer and reflection and writing and making videos. And I made no more videos because I didn't have time, because I was too busy talking and actually doing Camino. And so the part 1 just never happened. Now, you might say, well, where are the ones you did make? Well, basically, I had a problem with the computer and it wiped them all. Idiot. So I have all the photos, but I have no video record. So what I'm probably going to do at the end is this. I'm going to put on a photo montage of the photos of the first Camino. And I will also, I've taken some videos going along the route in the bus, getting to the start of my second Camino, because I got as far as a place called Lorca, which is a tiny little village in between a town called Puente la Reina and Estella. And so what I did in the beginning of the second one, I went to Pamplona and then took a bus to Lorca. And so I have taken some little fleeting videos of those places from the bus, but it's not the same. And that's why there's no part 1. That's why I did Camino, and that's why I'm still doing it, because it was so incredible. And so what I should say before I sign off, I want to say a real big thank you to the fantastic people that made my first Camino amazing. And they were Jackie Donahue, who's the Australian lady who I met on that hill from hell. And then later I met Tom and Janine Anderson from America, and they're a couple in their 70s doing it. Really, really nice couple, still in touch with them. And then there's also Marijke, who is a Dutch lady who I walked with for several days after I said goodbye to Jackie in Pamplona. And she was a very, very lovely lady, and she actually had to leave Camino early because of her dog. So we actually went back to San Sebastian together. And yeah, so that was Camino Part 1. That's the introduction also to Camino Part 2. I hope you enjoy the videos. Keep traveling, and buen Camino.